Hi, hello, and welcome to Under Review. I'm your host and one-woman show, Haley Stum, and I'm super stoked to be behind my mic, as usual, starting the month off right with some sports. April's a big month for almost every sport imaginable, so being able to pick it apart with all of you is definitely the coolest thing ever. Today I'll be providing insight from professional golfer and host of For the People podcast, Killeen, heading into the Masters, and I'll be sitting down with the former play-by-play broadcaster for the Houston Astros, Bill Brown, discussing his takeaways from spring training so far and what he thinks of MLB's new policies following the lockout. There's so much to discuss, so let's just get right into it. Here's the nitty-gritty heading into the 2022 Masters Golf Tournament, courtesy of Killeen. It's the weekend all golf fans have been waiting for, Masters Tournament weekend. Before all the pros tee off, it's important to have a full grasp on what's all at stake and who to look out for. Killeen, a professional golfer and host of For the People podcast, definitely has some hot and quite frankly funny takes on what he sees going down this weekend. Let's start off with the pressing question golf fans have been bamboozled by recently. If Tiger Woods plays, will he even have a chance? Killeen says Woods' chances aren't looking great, however, after his emotional script-flipping Masters win in 2019, counting out Tiger completely is not a good move. Basically, if Tiger makes it to Sunday a couple shots shy of the leader, definitely don't hold your breath. While we're on the topic of big question marks, one of the other big mysteries in the golf superverse is how long America's sweetheart and favorite lefty Phil Mickelson will be taking a leave of absence from the game of golf amidst his withdrawal from the Masters. Killeen says he doesn't think anyone really knows and that he hopes that Mickelson is back on the course soon. He mentions that Mickelson not playing in the event of the year is probably a combination of things that have occurred and transpired over the past few weeks that have led him to feel not playing was his best bet. Although it'll be weird for many not seeing old Phil playing this year, I think most like myself just want to know if Mickelson will return at all. Golf just kind of keeps leaving us all on these cliffhangers, and it's really making my head explode. Another thing golf likes to do, besides frustrate fans, is frustrate players. Standing in the way of many players' personal best is the iconic 12th hole at Augusta National. Although it looks like any other hole on paper, time and time again it spoils so many potential runs for the championship. Killeen says its difficulty comes from the awkward shape of the green and the way the wind swirls around it. He says that the touchy wind can cause you to catch a gust one way or the other, end up in a bad spot, and make double. Now, you're probably wondering, Haley, how would a professional golfer approach a sticky situation like this then? Well, although I haven't touched a golf club since I was 5 with the plastic golf club toys that everyone had, I don't know if you had them, I'll insert a picture right here. JJ has a plan. He says, and I quote, "I'd probably just fly it directly in the cup for an ace. I'm not sure why the other guys haven't thought of doing this." I don't know about you, but I think that's some groundbreaking advice. If there happens to be any golfers entered in the Masters listening or watching right now, you're welcome in advance. Now, someone who may not need this advice anyways is Scottie Scheffler. Entering the tournament, the current number 1 ranked golfer in the official world rankings, Scottie Scheffler, has 16-1 odds of winning the Masters after acquiring 3 wins in his last 5 starts. Another man to look out for is Cam Smith, a difficult player to rattle, which is crucial in a major like this, along with winning twice in just 7 events this year. Killeen says that both Scheffler and Smith are great picks to make a run for the green jacket, and if you want to see a first-time winner. Specifically on Scheffler, he notes that Scheffler may have a one-up over others by having a caddy for him on the bag that won twice with Bubba Watson. I know it's kind of obvious to say to look out for the number 1 player in the world, but you never know who will rise to the daunting occasion that is the Masters, and Scheffler having noticeable momentum along with wise guidance along the way is a very lethal combination. What might be the biggest storyline of the tournament this year, however, according to JJ, is Rory McIlroy's run at completing his career Grand Slam for the Masters title is the only title he is missing. Killeen thinks Rory possesses so much game and really hopes he does complete his Grand Slam, although McIlroy is not JJ's pick to win. He says he knows it's constantly on Rory's mind, so it's definitely a possibility with that desire and his game on the rise. Rory has already picked up 2 top 10s and a win in 2022, not to mention his shots gained off the tee average has significantly improved from last year, a skill that is imperative in taking on a ball-striking course like Augusta National. Like I said earlier, with such an important tournament like the Masters, anyone can come out of the blue and surprise us all. Killeen thinks that Tom Hoge has the ability to be that dark horse. JJ's faith in Hoge is thanks to the great year he's had so far and the fact that he's a TCU alumni like himself. Now, Hoge is a Masters rookie, and Masters historically don't favor rookies very well, and Killeen says, and I quote, "I bet $20 on him at 101, so that should motivate him." Words from the wise, nonetheless. Having said all that, I think it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. JJ Killeen's pick to win the championship. Killeen has John Rahm bringing home that first place prize money. He says that he knows Rahm has been a little quiet here recently, but it may just be the fact that he's been getting his game ready for Augusta National. With the U.S. Open Championship win last year under his belt, I think Rahm is a very respectable pick for the championship, having a good balance of experience, but also that burning desire you get from a younger player. These past few months in baseball have been wild, to say the least. From being in a lockout to new rules coming out of the lockout, the face of baseball is changing. Moreover, with spring training going on as we speak, we as fans get to see a sneak peek of what this historic season may look like and what players may have the biggest impact. Here with me today is none other than Bill Brown, a former play-by-play broadcaster for the Houston Astros for 30 years. He gives his thoughts on what he is seeing and what we may see in regular season play. We're here on Under Review. I'm here with none other than former play-by-play broadcaster for the Houston Astros for over 30 years, Bill Brown. Bill, I'm honestly just excited to have you on the show and kind of nosedive into what we call the craziness that is baseball right now.
Yeah, it is crazy, Haley, especially this winter with the work stoppage and then people trying to sign free agents there quickly once they got started again, and shortened spring training and now expanded rosters. Yeah, here it seems the last 3 years has been quite different.
Well, I know I've kind of given you a formal introduction, but tell us a little bit about yourself and what your journey looked like leading up to the booth for the Astros.
When I was your age, I wanted to do what I wound up doing. So that is pretty unusual. You probably will too, but nonetheless, it doesn't always work out that way. And I was extremely fortunate to get a lot of breaks along the way. And, didn't always get to do sports, had to be a news reporter and chase ambulances and things like that. But that's really not all that unusual in this business. And then, it seems that every now and then fortune smiles on you, God's good to you, and you get an opportunity. And at that point, you're lucky if you can grab onto it and hold on to it for a while and just try to learn from all the people. I got to meet Jack Buck once I had been broadcasting for a while. I grew up listening to Jack Buck. So this was the real thrill of going into this business and being around these people that you've listened to earlier in your life.
Well, obviously you have a lot of experience, being in the booth, analyzing players, programs, talent. So I kind of want to talk to you about now as a spectator, what have you seen out of spring training this year?
Not very much. No, honestly, I decided I would dial back a little bit on sports in this later in life section and not be so avid about being a fan. And I think I will enjoy it just as much not watching every pitch. Maybe selecting a few games here and there to watch, reading about others, things of that nature. So I think I'm a very casual fan right now. I'm certainly not an expert on anything at this point, but I think I'll enjoy it just as much. I think that the Astros season will be enjoyable. I think baseball in particular will be enjoyable because there are a lot of good, young, exciting players coming into the big leagues right now, and they put on a show. They're fun to watch.
Well, you said there's some exciting young players coming in. Have you seen any minor league prospects play that you think could have an impactful rookie season in the majors this year?
Last year, I saw Jeremy Pena, who I think is going to play a lot of shortstop for the Astros this year. I was quite impressed with him. And but I have not seen, the Bobby Witt Juniors of Kansas City. I think he's going to play a prominent role probably in the Royals scheme of things this year. He may be their opening day starting shortstop. Haven't seen the kid from Seattle, Rodriguez, who may be their center fielder. So I can't really say that I'm up on all the young prospects, but the Astros have a few, and I think that they're going to give them a chance this year.
Well, obviously, Astros is your area of expertise, and you touched on Jeremy Pena. With the departure of Carlos Correa, as you know, he's probably expected to take over as the Astros shortstop this season. He's been hot during spring training. As someone who covered Correa, do you think Pena has the ability to completely fill the duties Correa shouldered?
No, I don't think so. I think he can be a good player. And typically Dusty Baker or whoever would be the manager of an exciting young player who's joining a good team would not really put him into the focus. He would try to let him just kind of fit in with the other guys and get a chance to learn a little bit more about what it's like to be in the big leagues. So usually that means batting down in the order, hitting seventh, maybe something like that, rather than lead off. I know they looked at him at lead off for a while in spring training. I'm not sure which way they're going to go with that, but I think that he'll just be allowed to fit in and hopefully get off to a decent start. So he'll have some confidence, and that can make a world of difference.
Well, having said that, what areas do you think the Astros need to make up for in order to kind of maintain their level of play that they've had over the past few years?
That's a really good question. And I think it would center around the offense because having lost Correa this year, Springer last year, right now, shortstop doesn't appear to be an answered question at the moment. Center field isn't really a lock for anybody at this point. So I think Chas McCormick, Jose Siri are probably going to fight it out for center field. And I wouldn't be so shocked to see a trade of some kind later on as the season develops. But I think, Bregman probably is going to return to top form. It would be the way that this offense could really perform well if he can do that. Altuve, I was encouraged to see that he is not going to be pulling the ball as much this year. He's going to go back to using all fields again, which makes him a much better hitter. I think he was trying to take quite a bit of the burden on himself by hitting home runs. And I think he's now decided that was not really the productive way for him to go about his offensive plan. The Astros will need another good year from Bradley, from Gurriel, and Tucker. Kyle Tucker is really going to be an important guy in this team. He now has arrived on the scene. He's productive. He's one of the top young players in the game. And I think he's going to be a really important component of this team. But having said all that, offensively, when you lose a Correa, you lose a Springer in consecutive years, generally you like to rely on improved pitching so you can win those lower scoring games. And in that sense, I think that this pitching staff is in pretty good shape.
Right. And you said you would expect a trade. What kind of trade would you expect?
They may have to try to trade for a center fielder. I'm not sure. They have Pedro Leon in the minor leagues, and he's a possibility. So he could come up and help. But that might happen. I don't think they would trade for a shortstop, but that might be another way to go if things fall apart on them at that position. I'm sure they were hoping that they didn't have to trade at either spot, but in those two positions right now, it doesn't look like a real strength of the team.
Right. And I think it's easy to say that we hope that they fire on different cylinders with the lack of Correa, but what kind of Astros team do you think we will see this season? All honesty.
I think Haley will be missing some power. Certainly with Correa, we'll miss his arm. His arm is a real weapon. He can throw people out at home plate from out in left center field. And I wouldn't expect any other shortstop in the game to throw as well as he throws. So I'm not sure how good Pena's arm is at this point, but I wouldn't expect it to be anywhere close to where Correa's was. Doesn't mean it would have to be that good for the team to win, but I do think that this team is going to have to be really pulling together very hard this year. I don't think there are as many superstars as there were 3 years ago. And I think that means that it's going to have to play well as a team.
I mean, not to mention the Altuve Correa chemistry, in the middle infield, that was a huge dynamic for the Astros. But
You're right.
I do want to shift away from the players and the programs we've kind of been seeing preseason and kind of how the rule book has started to look this season. There's kind of been an argument made of recently that baseball is dying out. MLB has implemented policies like the pitch clock and eliminating defensive shifts to kind of try to speed up the game and cultivate more action. Do you think personally it takes away from the integrity of the sport?
I'm a little divided, but I'm all for more action and less downtime.
Right.
You know, I went to your game. There was action in that game. There was a lot of concentration that keeps the fans in on every pitch. When hitters step out of the box and adjust their batting glove after every single pitch, I say it's time to change that. It is time to change that culture and put a rule in effect that that's not allowed. You can step out with one foot rather, for a minute and adjust, your batting glove, and then step back in and take 10 seconds, but not a minute. And so I think there is too much inactivity in the game. I don't think there's enough use of all fields. I would like to see the shift banned, but I'd really rather like to see the hitters use all fields.
Right.
I don't think they're going to, as long as the pay scale is rewarding home runs far more than rewarding singles.
I mean, hitters hit.
Right. So, I personally, I think a lot of fans don't agree with me, Haley, on this. I think a lot of fans feel, hey, 3-hour game is fine with me. And that's where your market is. So if the fans are fine with it, I don't know why we're worried about all this stuff. Personally, I think there's a lot of dead time that needs to be tightened up. I remember back in the 70s, Haley, when I used to watch a lot of games, the average time of game was 2 hours and 30 minutes. If somehow it could be reduced to even 2:45, I think it would be more enjoyable for the fans.
Right.
And
I think those lovers of the 3-hour game are those loyal and diehard fans that, do you think that the MLB will lose engagement from them trying to cultivate a younger audience?
That is the real question. And I think they are prepared to risk that, because if you've been a fan of the game for a long time, you're probably not going to desert it now. But if you are not a good fan of the game because of the inactivity, and you're going to be forced to pay more attention to it if there's more action, I think they're really, really concerned about losing this next generation of fans. I think the ratings show it. A lot of the fans may not agree with it, but I think the numbers are there, and the ratings go down every year. So therefore, I think that's where a lot of the concern is.
Right. Another rule that has been put in place is the universal designated hitter rule, and I feel like that will kind of cultivate more action for the younger audience. What are your thoughts on that rule, bringing it to the National League?
I think it will. I think it'll bring more offense to the National League. I think it will bring another exciting bat off the bench of these National League clubs into the lineup. Most people don't care to see pitchers hit.
Right.
So that would be a good move for the game this year.
How do you think it'll impact the way National League teams structure their 28-man roster and how they look for pitchers?
I think the two leagues will be very close together in the way they look at things. I've read that the Astros are going to carry 10 relief pitchers because they have the additional roster spots. They have 28 total roster spots for the first month of the season. Then they cut back to 26. So 10 relievers. Now, what concerns me about managers who have 10 relievers is if they have 10 relievers, they're going to use 10 relievers.
Right.
And that slows down the game a little. So I don't think the fans want to see a real parade of bullpen guys, but I think that's what we're going to get for the first month.
Right. And that just combats the whole thing that the MLB was trying to do.
Yeah. And I think it's because of the shortened spring training. So we'll have to wait to make this judgment on how the game is going until probably July or so when things settle down. But I do think that the game is very enjoyable when a starting pitcher goes 7 innings, and we don't see that very much anymore.
Right. Okay. Well, I have some hot takes for you that I've been seeing circulating around the media around the MLB's new changes. So I'm going to propose to you these hot takes, and you're going to kind of pick a side. So are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one is allowing advertising on player uniforms and equipment. Is it providing more opportunities for players, or will it cause players to focus more on that me before we aspect, a flaw that can affect team chemistry?
I think that this has been coming for a while. I think people have had a chance to get used to the idea of it. I don't know if the players like it that much, but yeah, there is certainly more attention being paid to the individual player. The guy Jazz Chisholm with Miami, have you seen his glove? He's
Yes,
got
I
this
have.
technical glove, and that's kind of where we've come in the game today. So it's in line with all the developments we've seen in recent years. And I think Major League Baseball has just decided to roll with it. Let these players be players, let them showcase themselves, and we'll see, because the young fans like that. And so anything the young fans really attach themselves to is going to be popular with Major League Baseball.
Touching on younger fans, what do you think of that new Derby X that the MLB has come out with?
I have not seen it. What do you think of it?
I have mixed feelings about it. I don't necessarily know if it concerns MLB. I think it's a different branch of baseball, and it's almost like it's a different game. And I think they're trying to cultivate a different audience. And honestly, I didn't know my true feelings about it, so that's why I wanted to ask you about it. But yeah, that's where I'm with it.
Well, here's what, sometimes we sit around, people who've been in the game forever, and we just toss out goofy ideas, right? So somebody came up with the idea when we were talking, I don't know, about 2 decades ago. Well, people are concerned about the lack of activity on the field. Why don't we just change things up a little bit and make baseball more of a contact sport? And let's just start having the infielders just crash in from the corner, just crash in on the
Fun coverage.
Yeah, what that does. It's a little wacky. It's a little crazy. It's never going to happen. But believe me, there are people out there thinking crazy things about what could develop in baseball, and they may come to trying them someday.
Right. And I do like MLB's initiative. They did include women on that roster, professional softball players. And Allison Footer, when she was on the episode, she said, I'm going to be honest, I don't think we'll ever see a woman pitcher in the MLB unless it's a knuckleballer, and MLB is trying to move away from, the knuckleballers and just going for straight velocity. But I do appreciate MLB's trying to implement more female representation for, a female audience. So I do appreciate that. So
well, this is a little weird. Do you think there will ever be a time when there will be a woman who can pitch a baseball underhand well enough to be effective in the major leagues?
I don't think a general manager would take a chance on it, if you want my honest opinion.
Yeah.
It's driving away from anything they've ever known, and I genuinely don't think that they would go for it.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
That's all I wanted. Your opinion.
Well, let's move on to the second hot take, as we kind of expanded on that one. Will the expansion of postseason bursts continue in the future, or do you think 12 teams is the biggest number MLB will allow? Mind you, we started with 4 when the playoff format started.
Yeah, I think there'll be more. I could see 14 coming very soon. Yeah, they tried to get the 14 teams this year. Major League Baseball did, but the players wouldn't go for it, so they settled on 12. But it's about money, and that usually is what happens. There are more players who get the playoff money with more teams in the playoffs, but the teams also benefit from that too. More games for TV, so you can get a little bit higher TV contract. So I just think it's going to keep going in that direction. I really do.
Do you think that kind of takes away from the meaning of being a postseason team?
I do. I think it waters it down. I think that baseball, for the longest time, was the last bastion of really making teams earn this playoff berth. In the other sports, more than half the teams are in the playoffs.
Right.
It's not that big a deal to be a playoff team. I think it really meant something to be a baseball playoff team. Now, not so much.
Right. All right. I've got my last one for you. Will the new draft lottery actually force losing programs' hands, or is it merely a Band-Aid that MLB put over the tanking issue?
Yeah, and that one, I think, remains to be seen. We'll just have to see it unfold, because now if you finish the 6th worst record, you're in the draft lottery.
Exactly.
And you could still get the top pick. So some people are speculating, well, you wouldn't really tank then, because if you tank and lose more games than anybody else, then yeah, you're the worst team, but that doesn't mean you're going to get the first pick. On the other hand, you might see some teams. Okay, so what if you had the seventh worst record and you were one game better than the team with the sixth worst record? Would you take at the end of the season to lose more games than number six? So you become number six, so you get in the draft lottery. We'll have to see how that works.
Personally, I touched it on my episode last month before the lockout ended. I don't think that the issue will resolve until they fix the revenue sharing issue. I think they need to put revenue sharing on a sliding scale based on how large the market is, and they're not doing that. So when will tanking ever stop unless that's changed? That's my take on it.
Well, that's a good take on it, and I'll give you my take on something else, and that is there should be a salary cap and a salary floor, both, to try to make sure that these teams are all competing, but that you don't have the New York Mets at $280 million and we'll say a team like Pittsburgh at $53 million, something like that.
Is there anything else you want to add based on, the spring training that you've seen or the rules that we've seen change?
I just think that, it's nice to anticipate a full season again.
Yes.
And one without any labor strife. It's always a big sigh of relief when you get past another labor deal. Now you got 5 years of peace. That is what I'm looking forward to.
But what does that say about the CBAs that we're constantly putting out? See, they're not effective.
Right.
So I think that kind of sends a message to the MLB. It's like, okay, well, you're just putting Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid. I know I already used that symbol earlier, but it's not doing anything.
No, and I think that the two sides need to cooperate much, much better. For a while, for a few years, they were. I think they need to get back into that realm again where they're starting to work on the next 5-year deal 3 years into this 5-year deal instead of just being at war at the last minute because things broke down.
Oh my God, MLB was in procrastination station, as we saw. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But
yeah, they're going to lose some fans because of it. It happens.
Right. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show, Bill Brown. It's truly a pleasure talking to you every single time and just breaking stuff down with me.
Thank you, Haley. My pleasure.
This is Signed, Sealed, Delivered, and today I'm running you through what I think are the 5 most impactful contract deals that have been finalized recently in the MLB and the NFL. With a lot of pen to paper as of recently, it's hard to keep up with who's going where and for how much. So, that's why I'm here. Here are my top 5 picks for both baseball and football. We're kicking it off with some Major League Baseball contracts. To start, I'm going to go with the Red Sox's acquisition of former Colorado Rocky Trevor Story on a 6-year, $140 million deal. Boston has been looking for another heavy hitter on the right side after losing impact players to trade and free agency. I think they just found just that in Story being a 2-time All-Star and the owner of 2 Silver Slugger awards. I think Story adds some firepower to that Red Sox lineup that they'll need to compete in an already stout AL East. Next up, the deal that marked the biggest commitment to a free agent in Minnesota Twins history, Carlos Correa's contract is huge. This 3-year contract for the Twins brings some championship caliber energy to an organization that has quite frankly been suppressed and lacking in the AL Central. I think this deal could have a significant impact on how teams approach the Twins, and it might even cause a slight shift in power amongst the American League. The Phillies have really tried to bolster their bats over the offseason by expanding their competitive balance tax and adding outfielders Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber to their roster. Philadelphia saw the adds of strong pitching to their fellow NL East opponents like the Mets, and tried to combat that with signing Castellanos and Schwarber. For Castellanos averaged a homer for every 16 at-bats across the last 2 seasons, and Schwarber had a 1.216 OPS as a leadoff hitter, which is his desired role for Philadelphia. I think that with these pickups, the Phillies will have a good chance at making their first postseason appearance since 2011 and ending that drought. What was a grieving loss for Atlanta Braves fans was a huge acquisition for the Los Angeles Dodgers when Freddie Freeman put pen to paper for a 6-year, $162 million deal. The 2021 World Series champ is now the 4th former MVP on Los Angeles squad and now part of a lineup that led the NL with 5.1 runs scored per game last season. It'll be no surprise to hear that the Dodgers, especially with an addition of longtime producer like Freeman, have one of the biggest chances, and arguably the biggest chance, at making a run at that World Series pennant this 2022 season. And rounding out the baseball deals, the Atlanta Braves, amidst losing Freddie Freeman, made a mega deal that consisted of trading 4 players to pick up all-star first baseman Matt Olson. Olson is a 2-time Golden Glove winner and hit 39 homers, along with driving in 111 runs last season. Taking a gamble on Olson and trading away multiple players with potential like young outfielder Christian Patch is definitely bold. It'll be interesting to see how this dice roll plays out for the reigning champions in this upcoming regular season. Moving on to the Gridiron, we'll start with the Buffalo Bills making a big splash and signing Von Miller to a 6-year, $120 million deal. The 2-time champ joins a Bills defense that was one of the best in the league last season, allowing a league-best 289 points, causing 30 turnovers, and giving up just 4.6 yards per play, the only team in the league with an average below 5 yards. Miller's veteran expertise meshes well with the younger defensive line duo of Ed Oliver and Shaq Lawson, as the Bills hope to get over their hump this year in the playoffs. Next up is one of the bigger and more controversial trades of the offseason, where the Houston Texans dealt quarterback Deshaun Watson to Cleveland Browns for 5 draft picks, 3 of them being first-rounders. The Browns then signed Watson to a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million deal, despite the 3-time Pro Bowler facing 22 civil case lawsuits and will likely be suspended for sexual misconduct allegations that surfaced last year. If Watson is able to play at any point with the Browns, the front office did help him out with the signing of Amari Cooper, who gives Cleveland one of the best route runners in the league, to complement the Pro Bowl running back Nick Chubb. Let's head out west to Los Angeles. How about those Chargers? They went out and signed 2 huge defensive players in Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson. Mack played just 7 games last season for the Bears due to injury, and in those 7 games, several of which he played through injury, Mack still managed to put up 19 tackles with 6 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. Jackson comes in on the heels of an 8-interception and league-leading 23-pass defense this season, not to mention being developed by Bill Belichick, notoriously crafting some elite defensive backs. Now we'll talk about the Mile High City, as the Broncos traded for quarterback Russell Wilson from the Seattle Seahawks. The Broncos roster was already well-rounded before Wilson came along, with a great wide receiver room housing Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Tim Patrick, along with a great offensive line. It makes the quarterback's job easy, and that's exactly where Wilson fits right in. Adding guys like Randy Gregory on defense only makes this roster even better, as the Broncos already hold good defensive talent in players like Bradley Chubb, Patrick Surtain, and Justin Simmons. And finally, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and it looks like former Packers wide receiver Devonte Adams is going to be staying there for quite some time after being traded to the Oakland Raiders for a first and second round pick in the 2022 draft, and signing a 5-year, $140 million extension to play with Derek Carr, who was also his quarterback and close friend during his college days at Fresno State. Adams is at the top of his game, coming off a 1,500-yard receiving season with 11 touchdowns, and gives the Raiders a reliable wide receiver one that they've been searching for. I hate to say it, but that's all I have for you today. These outros never get any easier, if you were wondering. If you want more sports rants and hot takes in your life, make sure to click that subscribe button and hit that little notification bell at the top so you can be the first to see it. If you want to listen to the show on the go, on your morning car rides, on your morning runs, or any other time where you're not able to watch, you can check out the podcast version of this show and other shows on Spotify with the link in the description. Follow the show on Twitter at UnderReviewWithHay so you can see updates and new posts right there on your feed. It's not a goodbye, it's a see you later, and hopefully you come back and see me in May. Bye, guys.